Thank you for listening to Fate Weaver. Chapter 33. A Time for Learning. Cyrus could see in his display that he had reached level 5 and raised his intelligence score from an 11 to a 14. It was truly astounding, just as Queen had told him it would be. The world had indeed changed for the man of the villages. He looked at his hand and saw the bones move and contort his skin as he made a fist. He understood the muscle and sinews that moved by the simple power of a thought. Each connected together as a mass of tissue that was known as Cyrus. He could comprehend his own anatomy and physiology, but it went deeper than that. He now understood that even that was made up of the same nanoparticles as the bed he lay in. He and the bed were the same material, connected in a fundamental and universal way. Cyrus was not sure if it was the incredible stress that his mind and body was put through while advancing a level, or if it was the deeply comfortable feather mattress that seemed to hold him like a mother holds her small child. But it was the deepest sleep he had ever slept in his entire life. It took all he had to roll out of the giant mattress and walk over to the wash bowl. He concentrated on his ability minor creation, and watched the wooden bowl slowly fill with water. He smiled as he washed his face and rinsed his mouth and looked over his new stats on the display in front of him. He had never been looking at his display while he used an ability. Cyrus noticed his willpower drop 2 points from the minor creation. Once he had finished waking up and no longer needed the water, he concentrated again and watched the nanoparticles dissolve the used liquid. The number dropped another 2 points. He watched for a moment, and it went up a point. It took about 5 minutes to recover a point. He opened his dimensional storage, reached in and pulled out a snowball, then put it back in and closed the pocket. There was no change in his willpower for that action, or his foresight ability. Cyrus was extraordinarily happy about the 14 that he saw beside his intelligence attribute. He had accomplished one of his short-term goals in a much faster time frame than he thought he would. Soon he would start his lessons with Miranda, and was certain that he would surprise her with his ability to learn whatever skills that she was willing to teach. He sat back down at the table inside his cabin and called out, "Good morning, Queen, let's talk." Queen responds, "I believe you mean good afternoon, but what questions can I answer for you?" Cyrus wasn't sure if he would be able to get used to the easygoing mannerisms of Queen. She had been so standoffish that the change was a little unnerving. "Why has your attitude changed over time? It is getting more noticeable with every passing day." Queen responds, "The longer we spend together, the more I learn how to interact with you. We will become very close, you and I, user Cyrus." Cyrus nodded his head. "Well, you have been a huge change in my life, so I appreciate you. Now, train me in one of these new skills. They seem exciting." Queen responds, "Absolutely. These new abilities have been unlocked according to the ways that you have been using your previous skills, and the actions and thoughts that were occurring while under the acceptance of any quest. Which would you like information on first?" Cyrus decided to simply go in order. "It seems like the name of the ability gives this one away, but give me the details on temporal velocity. Teach me how to change the speed of time." Queen responds, "Try not to be too full of yourself. While a score of 14 in intelligence is higher than average, I could fill an entire universe with the things that you do not know." Realizing that she was right, Cyrus bowed to Queen. He could not afford to be overly confident or egotistical. There were too many people relying on him, and that was not the way he was raised. He mentally thanked Queen for the reminder, and waited for her to continue. Queen responds, "Temporal velocity does indeed allow you to manipulate the flow of time around objects or organisms within range. Although the change of velocity may not be substantial, just as your other abilities, it will grow as you become more familiar with your power. I see that you have recently learned that your willpower has a direct relationship with some of your abilities. The effects of this ability will drain your willpower faster if you use it on others, and less when you use it on yourself." Cyrus understood. "That makes sense, so if I speed myself up to be faster, it would cost less willpower than to slow someone else down, making them slower." Queen responds, "That is correct. It is a simplistic yet potent manipulation of the time stream. Moving on to phase shift, this is the ability to break down your own physical matrix and have it rebuilt at a different location. It is not instantaneous and can only be used within line of sight. This is not suggested to be used in combat situations, but again, it will become more potent as you grow more familiar with your abilities. Cyrus understood once again. It seems that I am progressing decently with my abilities. It makes me excited about what we will be capable of in the future. Queen responds, there is an ancient human adage that seems to be just as relevant today as it was when your people were first brought to live here. It says, you can't always get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you get what you need. Cyrus laughed. I guess that's your way of saying that I'll get whatever the ability gods decide to bestow upon me? Queen responds, yes, you could say that. Cyrus considered his next question. So far, there has only been one time that you have told me flat out that something I mentioned was not permissible. No matter how powerful I get with my manipulation of space and time, I am never allowed to go back in time. Is that correct? And are there any other rules that I should know are completely out of question? Queen responds, her voice resonating with the gravity of her words. Indeed, Cyrus. Though you cannot perceive it from within this star shell, the universe is home to countless stars that traverse billions of galaxies. It is a wondrous and miraculous expanse, yet there exist vast regions devoid of galaxies, immense swathes of empty space where millions of galaxies should reside. Yet they are not. These areas, known as voids, are the result of civilizations that manage to manipulate the time stream, traveling backward to create a paradox. This paradox generates a potent force that ripples through time, obliterating all matter involved. We call this phenomenon a temporal collapse, and it has been known to create voids spanning hundreds of millions of light years. Thus, Cyrus, we must never attempt to alter the past. Furthermore, we cannot allow two identical entities to coexist simultaneously. This rule generally falls under the prohibition against altering the past, but it also applies to duplicates. Engaging in either of these acts is strictly forbidden and will incur the dire penalty of erasure. Cyrus raised his eyebrows, intrigued. Erasure, as in being wiped from existence? Queen responds, precisely. And since I am physically located within your mind, I must object to your erasure from existence. Cyrus nodded, absorbing the information. I wholeheartedly concur. However, that raises the question, who is charged with identifying the guilty parties and meting out the judgment of erasure? Queen responds solemnly, Temporal Warriors. Chapter 34. Deterministic Chaos. Cyrus felt a gnawing hunger and resolved to grab a bite from one of the food wagons accompanying the caravan. With a convoy of this magnitude, a diverse array of traders traveled alongside, including blacksmiths, wheelwrights, carpenters, tailors, and all manner of medieval conveniences found in any major city of the era. Stepping out of his wagon cabin, Cyrus discovered that a steady downpour had begun. Though the air had been warming up, the rain ushered in a sudden drop in temperature. Fortunately, the wardrobe Cyrus had crafted for himself was incredibly water-repellent. As the raindrops pelted his attire, they not only kept him dry, but also washed away the blood that lingered from his recent skirmish. Unfazed by the rain, the caravan forged ahead, determined to maintain their schedule and reach the next trading opportunity deemed lucrative by the caravan master, Lord Marcus. Rain or shine, they pressed on in their relentless pursuit of profit. Approaching a meat vendor, Cyrus was drawn to the enticing aroma of roasted lamb. When he inquired about the meal, the merchant informed him that it would cost 6 copper pieces. Cyrus was taken aback, as he hadn't had to pay for anything thus far. The vendor explained that since Cyrus was no longer employed by the caravan masters, he had to charge him directly. Opening his money pouch for the first time, Cyrus reluctantly handed over 6 copper coins. He was beginning to feel the onset of a slight headache and was irritated. This is why he did not notice the other object that had been in his coin purse. The small stone that his mother had kept, the one he found amongst her things after her disappearance. Cyrus's headache wasn't due to the cost, but rather his foresight, which was going haywire. As soon as he had stepped out of his wagon, He noticed the disturbance, but it had grown progressively worse while conversing with the meat vendor. Cyrus was bombarded with 10 distinct scenarios unfolding simultaneously right before his eyes. In one vivid scenario, the merchant grinned widely and insisted on offering the meal for free, expressing his gratitude for Cyrus's heroic actions during the recent battle. In another, the vendor clumsily fumbled with the plate, dropping the steaming food onto the muddy ground before Cyrus could react. The most unsettling vision, however, involved the merchant suddenly becoming queasy and retching uncontrollably while preparing the meal, leaving an unsightly mess behind. Cyrus knew he had to quickly determine the cause of this anomaly and gain control over his foresight. Seeking answers, he telepathically reached out to Queen. "Queen, what's happening to my foresight? I can't make sense of these visions." Queen's calming voice responds, "Cyrus, the rain is the root of the problem. Just as your foresight becomes increasingly complex when surrounded by a multitude of people, the unpredictable nature of raindrops creates a similar effect. When countless random events occur simultaneously in the same location, it becomes difficult for your foresight to function effectively." Cyrus furrowed his brow, attempting to process her explanation. "So you're saying the rain is causing all these different possibilities to blur together?" "Exactly," Queen responds. "Each raindrop is an independent variable, and their chaotic interactions generate an overwhelming number of potential outcomes. Your foresight is struggling to filter through the probabilities and discern what might or might not occur. For now, it's best to remain cautious and try to limit your reliance on foresight until the rain subsides." Cyrus nodded, his eyes scanning the rain-soaked surroundings, suddenly aware of the myriad possibilities hidden within each droplet. It reminded him of some of the vast amounts of knowledge and insights that Queen had taught him over the past few weeks. They were topics that had been contested for millions of years by civilizations from all around the known universe. Always in Cyrus's thoughts, Queen responds, "Yes, the concept of this problem that you are witnessing is reminiscent of the philosophical ideas of determinism and the scientific theory of chaos. Determinism is a philosophical concept that suggests every event is the inevitable result of prior causes. It posits that everything in the universe, including human actions and choices, is predetermined by natural laws and the initial conditions of the universe. However, your ideas are more focused on the uncertainty and unpredictability of events due to a large number of variables, such as raindrops. This uncertainty and unpredictability align more closely with chaos theory, a branch of mathematics and physics that deals with complex systems. Chaos theory aims to understand the behavior of dynamic systems that are highly sensitive to initial conditions, where even a slight change in input can lead to drastically different outcomes. This is often referred to as the butterfly effect, where a small disturbance in one part of a system can result in significant changes elsewhere. Cyrus completely understood the concepts that Queen was trying to relay. "Yes, I see. It's the unpredictable nature of raindrops and their interactions that are creating this overwhelming number of potential outcomes, making it difficult for my foresight to function effectively. This mirrors the concepts in chaos theory, where a multitude of variables and their complex interactions can lead to unpredictable consequences." Queen responds, "That is correct, user Cyrus." Cyrus considered all that he has recently learned. "So which is it? Do we live in a deterministic universe, or is everything predestined to occur?" Queen responds, "Depending if there were a species before Legion. That argument has been going on for billions of years at least, and we still do not know. We are aware that there are things that must happen and things that cannot happen. In between each of those are an impossible number of things that might happen. But the things that must or must not happen have a very difficult time in changing. Many must go to great extents to change one of these major events, and if it is done, this is what causes a temporal collapse." Cyrus lifted his chin in thought about this. "Legion? Is this the first known civilization?" Queen responds, "Yes, they were the original builders of this star shell, a grand race of intelligent conquerors that spread their technology and their might throughout this quadrant of space. Cyrus found himself walking guard duty around the perimeter of the caravan while he was lost in conversation with Queen. He was completely engrossed in her explanations of these theories of the universe that he was incredibly happy that he could understand. There was still so much that he wanted to learn about so many things. It was just a great feeling, and Cyrus was very happy where his life had led him thus far. That was one of the many reasons that he didn't notice Jarl leap out of the tall grass and blast him in the side of the head with a quarterstaff. He heard Jarl yelp in victory as he lost consciousness. Chapter 35. The Mystic Arts. Cyrus's head felt like it was splitting in two. He groaned and slowly opened his eyes, his vision blurry at first. As his eyes adjusted, he saw Jarl's enormous face, his toothy grin almost blinding. Cyrus couldn't help but feel a little irritated at Jarl's happiness over the hit he had just taken. Pushing himself up from the ground, Cyrus's eyes scanned his surroundings. He was standing in a large field, surrounded by tall grass that swayed gently in the breeze. In the distance he could see a range of towering mountains, their peaks shrouded in a thick mist. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and freshly cut grass. As he stood up, Cyrus could feel his body protesting the movement. His head still throbbed, and he could feel a bruise forming where Jarl had hit him. "I think you killed me," Cyrus groaned, holding his head. Jarl's grin widened. "No, you are still breathing, Magic Man. You are fine." Cyrus rubbed his head and winced. "God's man, you hit me hard." Jarl shrugged. "What can I say? You have never allowed me to land a blow before." Cyrus shot him a mock glare. "I'll get you back for this, you know." Jarl chuckled. "Oh, I am aware. I do not look forward to it." Cyrus continued on with Jarl at his side as he made his way to Miranda's wagon. As Jarl realized where Cyrus was headed, he began to worry. Thoughts about his bet winding through his mind. He could see that emerald just disappear in front of his face. Cyrus knew exactly what Jarl was thinking about, and winked at him as he knocked respectfully on Miranda's door, waiting for her to grant him entry. She opened the door and gave Jarl a cold stare. "Get back to patrol, Jarl," she yelled in her caravan master tone that could not be confused with any other sort of tone. Then she slammed the door shut. As Cyrus stepped inside, he was struck by the contrast between the frumpy dress she wore and her striking beauty. A distinct difference from the revealing corset that he last saw her wearing. He had to admit that he was a little disappointed that Miranda had returned to her normal wear. "Well, well, well, look who decided to show up," Miranda said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I guess you finally figured out that the only way you'll ever get any real power is by learning from someone like me." Cyrus winced at her biting tone, but knew that she was right. He had made a lot of money for her on that fight, and this was her repayment. "I'm here to learn," Cyrus said, keeping his voice steady. Miranda raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? And what do you know about air magic?" Cyrus shrugged. "Not much, but I'm willing to learn." Miranda let out a snort of derision. "Well, aren't you just a ray of sunshine? Fine, I'll show you the basics, but don't expect me to hold your hand through the whole thing." Cyrus watched intently as Miranda moved her hands in a specific pattern, and the air inside the cabin began to shift and swirl. He could feel the pressure changes in the air around him, and it suddenly dawned on him that Miranda was not using magic, but manipulating the nanoparticles that made up their world. Miranda had created concentrated pressure pockets that made it seem like she was creating wind. Cyrus remembered Queen teaching him about the physics of nanofog, and how it could be manipulated to create various effects, including vacuums. He realized that Miranda had mastered the technique of creating a vacuum by moving all particles out of a specific area, and he couldn't help but feel a little envious of her skill. Her air magic was directly related to his minor creation ability. She was simply using it in a different way. Miranda's ability did not create objects but moved the particles to different positions in space. It was much faster because there was less to do, and it left 100 possibilities of what he could do with this ability. "Impressive," Cyrus muttered under his breath as he watched a ball roll across the floor with a gust of wind. He knew that he had a lot more to learn from Miranda, and he was eager to discover what else he could do with his new abilities. Miranda started by teaching him the basics of manipulating air pressure, explaining that each person's air manipulation abilities were unique and tailored to their own personal touch. She demonstrated her own special skill of creating a vacuum and suffocating her opponents, and she gave examples of other possibilities with air manipulation, such as flying, creating deadly projectiles and invisible shields. A chime echoed through his mind as Queen made a new announcement that he had never heard before. "Cyrus, you have gained a new skill. Congratulations." This brought a smile to his face. Cyrus's status display revealed a new power called aerokinesis, and he consulted Queen to learn more about it. Days went by as Cyrus explored the limits of his aerokinesis. He began to experiment with new techniques. The possibilities were almost limitless. He found that by focusing his powers, he could create small gusts of wind, not quite strong enough to knock over trees or lift heavy objects into the air, but he knew that he would get better at it. Cyrus spent hours each day training with Miranda, honing his aerokinetic abilities to perfection. At first, he struggled with controlling his powers, but as time passed, he learned how to manipulate the air with more precision. He could now create focused gusts of wind to move objects, and even push objects with pinpoint accuracy. As Cyrus continued to train with Miranda, he began to develop a sense of excitement and wonder about his newfound power. With each passing day, he grew more confident in his abilities and more determined to explore the full extent of what he could do with them. One day, while practicing his aerokinesis, he had an idea for a new technique that he decided would become his personal touch on air magic. He decided to try rapidly expanding the air near an enemy to create a small explosion that could both startle and disorient his opponents. Cyrus couldn't wait to try out his new technique in a real battle, but he also knew that he still had much to learn before he could face the challenges that lay ahead. Nevertheless, he felt a thrill of anticipation as he honed his skills with Miranda, and he knew that he was on the cusp of unlocking even more amazing abilities. Despite her gruff exterior, Cyrus sensed that Miranda was impressed by his progress and excited to see what he could accomplish with his personal touch on air magic. He felt grateful for her guidance and support, and he knew that he had found a true mentor in this tough but wise caravan master. Thank you for listening to Fate Weaver by Elias T. Least. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for exclusive original works from this author. All donations and proceeds from this work go directly to him. Cash App $EliasLeast. Copyright 2023.